Hello everyone, today we are going to cover the first program that you have in the Advanced Data Structure Lab or the File Structure Lab. Before that I have recorded 6 tutorials explaining some very important concepts regarding how to deal with files and the input-output streams. In case that you haven't seen them yet, I'd like you to go and check them out in my YouTube channel in the same playlist under Advanced Data Structure Lab. Today we are going to use these code blocks. You can download it online, and the program that we have is about read series of names, one per line, from the standard input, which is the keyboard, then write these names spelled in reverse order to the standard output, which is the monitor that we have, using the input-output redirections and pipes. This is the first part, and the second part we are requested to repeat the same exercise using an input file specified by the user instead of the standard input, then using an output file specified also by the user instead of the standard output. What they mean from this, that we have to read a group of names from the keyboard and then display the name in reverse order to the monitor. Then we have to repeat the same thing, but we are reading the names from a file and we are doing the same thing and output the result to second file. To start writing the code of this program, I'm going to do it line by line so you can follow me and execute on your laptops or PCs. The program will be divided into 3 main parts. Let's start with include some very important libraries or header files that we are going to use in our program. Since we are using the standard input output, so we have to include the input output stream header file. Also we are dealing with files for reading and writing, so we have to include the library fstream.h, and also we are using the string reverse function, so you have to include the string.h because it contains the functions related to string handling. Also we are going to use the exit function and the system function. These two functions are inside the stdlib, and in case that you are using the Turbo C++ compiler, you have to include the conio.h because it contains the functions that you are going to use. So let's start with our first part. We are going to declare a class. So you can declare a class in C++ by using the keyword class followed by class name. This program is about standard input output and file, so I'm going to name my file std file. Then I have open and close this bracket. The class contains 2 parts. The first part is the variables that we are going to use, or the attributes. These attributes are usually made private, like this one. We are going to deal with some names, so I'm going to declare 10 names. An array contains this name, an array of 10 variables, and each variable is 20 length character. After that we are going to declare some functions. These functions are usually made public. We have 2 functions. The first function will be handling this first part, which is standard input output, so I'm going to call this function stdio. The second function will be about the second part, which is file input output, so I'm going to call my function file input output. That was the first part of this program. Then let's start with the second part, which is the main function. My main function can be like this one. Inside the main function, I'm going to make a loop, and this loop will be having a choice for the user. Either he wants to use the first part or the second part. So inside of here, I'm going to use a loop, and inside that loop we are going to have a switch. So let's declare our choice for the switch. I'll make it integer ch, then while 1. This is infinite loop. I can use the same as while true, or I can use like this one, infinite for loop. Then I'll ask the user to enter his choice. So we are going to have a set of choices for that. The first one will be standard input output. The second one, I can make /t here. Second one will be about file input output, and whatever we have after that I can make exit. So any other choice to exit. Then I'll ask the user also to enter his choice. Then CN for CH. After that, I have entered the choice from the user. I have to make switch for that CH. Inside this switch, we are going to have two cases, case 1 and case 2. You have to keep your code organized like this indent, starting from the main function. Then take some tab. If you are entering inside the loop, you have to make another tab. Then inside the switch, you have to make also another tab. Keep your code in order and tidy. In case 1, we are going to call the standard input output. So in order to call a function from a class, you have to make an object from this class. To declare an object from a class, you can either make it like this one, XYZ. These three are objects from this class, or you can make it inside the main function by making the name of the class std file following by an object. So you can either use it here inside the main or before the semicolon of the class. Now I have created an object from this class. I can call these functions using this object. So in case 1, we are going to use standard input output. I'm going to say object.stdio. I have called this function. Then don't forget to make a break. In case 2, I'm going to call the other function file input output, then break. If we have the default one, the default case will be about exit from the program. So I'm going to use exit 0. This is our main function. And in case that you want to make a clear screen before starting the program, if you are using this turbo C, you can use the clear screen function. But since we are using this code blocks, I can use system CLS, which has the same functionality. So after declaring our main function, it is ready now. The third part is to define the body of these two functions. So let's start with this stdio. In order to define a function of a class, you can either write the definition inside the class itself by writing whatever you need here for the body of this function. But suppose here you have a lot of functions inside your class, then it is not a good idea to define the body of these functions inside the class, because your class code will be very lengthy. So it's better to make the definition outside of the class. In order to make definition outside of the class, you have to specify the name of the class to which the function belongs. To do this, I have here two functions. I can take the same, Control C, and come here and make Control V. To define these two functions, I have to specify from which class this function comes from, because in case that we have another classes here, C1, suppose for example, and this C1 also have the same functions here. I have the same functions inside this class and the same function inside the other class. Then I have to specify from which class the function belongs. In order to do this, I have to use something called scope resolution. It is about mentioning the name of the class std file. This is the name of the class followed by this scope resolution. The same thing will be applied for the second function, std file, the name of the class, then scope resolution, then followed by opening and closing brackets. By this we are declaring the two functions, and here we are going to write the body of these functions. Let's make a compile and see if there is any error till now. There is no errors. So let's start with the first function, std input output. This function will be asked the user to enter how many names he wants to enter from the keyboard, as mentioned here. And then we are going to read these names one by one and store them in this array of names. After that, we are going to make the reverse and display that on the screen. So I have to make an integer number, which will be used to ask the user how many names he wants to enter. Enter the number of names, then cn the number. After that, I'll ask the user to enter the details. Enter the names one by one. So we are going to make a loop. This loop will be starting from the first index in the array of names until we reach this number. So I'm going to declare an I here, integer I, and this I will be equal to 0 and I is less than number and I plus plus. In each iteration of this loop, I'm going to insert the name. So let's say name in the index I. This loop will be reading the set of names and store them in the array that we declare here. We are using names, so I'm going to use here names. After inserting the names from the keyboard, this was the first part of the reading from the keyboard. The second part will be displaying the name in reverse order. So let's say the names in reversed order are. In order to display the name in reverse order into the screen, I have to make the same loop, int I is equal to 0 and I is less than number and I plus plus. Then in each iteration of this loop, I can say cout and write the name. If I make it like this, names of I, then int line, we are going to display these names in the same way they are entered from the keyboard. But what I need here is to display the name in reverse order. There is a function called string reverse, strref, inside the string.h header file. This function accepts a name or a string as an argument, and it will return the reverse of that string. So by calling this function, we are going to get the reverse of the name. So this function now that we wrote will be asking the user to enter how many names he have, then entering this name one by one from the standard input, the keyboard. Then it will be showing these names in reverse order to the standard output screen. We compile this program and there is no error. If I run this program now, I'm going to see these outputs. The first choice that we have is a standard output. We are going to call our function stdio. As you see here, we are going to ask the user how many names he wants to enter. So let's say 3. Enter the names one by one. So let's say Safwan, Raju, Nimi. Then we are going to see this message. The names in reverse order are. Then we are showing the name in spelled in reverse order. So this is our first function. The second function is to read the names from a file and reverse them and write the reverse name back to a second file. In order to do this, I have to declare two objects from the fstream. I'll call this in and out. Then I'll ask the user to enter the name of the input file and the name of the output file. So I'm going to declare string, let's say input of 10 characters and output of 10 characters. Then I'll ask the user to enter the name of the input file, then cn for this input, and also the same for the output file. Enter the name of the output file, cn output. Now after reading these two strings, input and output, I'm going to open the files that I want to handle, the input and the output. I'll start with n.open, and you can see the details of opening a file in the previous tutorials. So the name of the open file that you want to use is the input. Then I'll open this file for input mode. And the second file for the output, I'm going to open it using this output. Then the mode will be out. We are opening the first file for reading and the second file for writing. Before going forward, I have to check whether this file, the input file, whether it exists or not. Because in the out case, there is no problem, because in case that the file mentioned in the output string doesn't exist, a new copy will be created. But in case of the input, in case of reading file, the file must be exist, otherwise we'll have some errors in the program. So I have to check whether the file mentioned in the n exists or not. I have to make an if statement, and this if statement, the condition will be if this n doesn't exist. In case the file doesn't exist, I can display a message for the user, cannot open the file, then exit 0. But I have to let the user see this message, so I can use the getch. This getch is included into a library called con.io.h. Now, in order to read from one file and reverse the name and write them back to second file, I have to use a loop, let's say a while loop. This loop, the condition of this loop will be, as long as we are getting something from the input file, that means input.end of file, like this one. While we are reading from this file and we are not reaching the end of the file, keep looping inside this while. Inside the while, I'm going to read from the first file. So in order to do this, I have to use input.getLine. This getLine, we can use it with an object from fstream. I have here to declare a character of length 20. This length of this line is the same as the length. We are having 10 names and each name is 20 character length. So here I'm declaring a variable. I'm declaring a variable line. This variable I'm going to read inside this line with size 20. I have explained this function in previous tutorials. And after reading from the input file, I have to write to an output file. I told you in case that you want to write to a screen, you can use this cout. But here I'm going to write to a file, so I can use my output object, this one out. So out, I'm going to write the reverse of the name. Let's say string reverse, the same function that we use, and here I'm going to say the reverse of the line, like this one. And after that, make new line. Let's combine and see. So far so good. And lastly, don't forget to close the two files that you open, input.close and output.close. So let's review this function. We are defining a function called file input output. This function has this file stream input and output object. Then we'll be handling the reading file, and the output will be handling the writing of the file. We are declaring two variables, input and output, which they store the name of the input and the output file names. Then we are opening the first file, the input file, for reading mode, and we are opening the output file for output mode. Then in case the input file doesn't exist, I have or cannot be opened, I have to write a message for the user that we cannot open the file and exit from the program. After that, I have to make a loop that goes through the content of the first file, the reading file. So as long as this file doesn't reach the end of the file, I have to read from that file. We are using this input object, input.getLine. This function reads one line from the file and store the value inside this string, which is called line. And we are reading the same size 20. After reading the content inside this variable line, I have to write the content back to a second file. So we are using this out object, and we are writing the reverse of this name as we are requested from the question itself. After that, don't forget to close the two files that we use. This is the whole content of this program. If I compile now and run, we'll get these two things as mentioned here in the main function. Enter 1 for standard input output and 2 for file input output, and any other choice to exit. If I enter 1, then enter the number of names. So let's say that I have two names. The first name will be Safwan, then the second name will be Salwi. We are getting the reverse of this name. This is the first part of our program. In case that I want to use the second part, which is reading from a file, I have to specify the name of the file that I want to read. But till now I don't have a file. I can go to the location which the program contains, open containing folder, and inside this folder new text file. I will call this one f1.text, and I'm going to put here some names. So let's say Safwan MCA Bangalore. Then save this program and exit. I'll go back to the code blocks and run this program. I'll enter choice number 2. Enter the name of the input file. So I have created a file called tu.text. Enter. Then I'll be coming to here. Enter the name of the input file. We are inputting this f1.text. Then we are asking to input the name of the output file. Here, this file I'm going to call f2.text. There is no need that the file exists or not, because in case it doesn't exist as we have now, it will be created. But for the input file, the reading file, it must be there. So if I hit enter here, we are writing the output to the file. We are not saying anything on the screen, and the program terminates correctly. If I go back to the directory, I'll find here f2.text. This file was not there, but it was created when we mention it. As you see here, we are getting the reverse of this name. If I open file 1 and file 2, you can see the output of these both files. This is the first file. It contains the name Safwan, and second file, it contains the name in reverse order. And also MCA, it is reverse, and Bangalore also reverse. Now, in case that you don't want to repeat your code twice, you don't want to be entering the name manually in this second function, I can add something to this, the first function, the standard input output. Since we are already inputting the name and store them in this array of names, I can write the same content to my file. So I can add here a code that says, let's close this program first, any number to exit. I can here create an output of length 10, string of length 10. Then I'll be asking the user to enter the file that will be store the values in. So let's say enter the name of the file to store the names into, and cn the output. After that, I have to create an object from fstream, the same thing that we do, call it out, then out.open this object in the write mode, the same thing that we do, then close here. After that, I have to write the name into this file. So let's say I'm going to make a for loop. This for loop will be integer I is equal to 0, I is less than number, and I plus plus. And in each iteration, I'm going to write to the file. So we are going to use this object out.string reverse for the name in the I index, then end line. If I compile this one, now if I hit the run, I'll see this on the screen. The first one is the standard input output, number 1. How many names you want to enter? Let's say 3. Let's say Safwan, Whatsapp, Asad. We are getting this name spelled in reverse order to the screen, and we are asking to enter the name of the file, store the names into the part that we added recently. If I write here the name of the file, let's say f1.txt, and before that I have to delete the previous file that we have. So I go back to the file location. I delete this one, f1 and f2. So now we don't have anything. If I enter f1.txt, it will be created. This file now contains these names spelled in the same order, Safwan and so on. That's it. Now if I go to choice number 2, file input output, enter the name of the input file. I will enter the same file name, f1.txt. Then what is the name of the output file? Let's say f2.txt. The second file is created now. Then any other choice to exit in the program. If you open file 1, it contains this rename, and file 2, it contains the reverse of this name. This is f1. and this is F2. As you see, we are reading the same name from the keyboard and display on the screen, this one, and the reverse order, this one. And in the same time, we are writing to a file and reading again from that file and display the reverse order on the screen. That was a complete output of this program. I hope that everything is clear inside this program. And in case you have any questions about any part of this program, please don't hesitate to write a comment below this video, and I'll be giving you a link in the description about a complete code of this program. You can download it and work with whatever you want, or you can implement your own program and ask me if you have any questions. That's it for today, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, which we are going to explain the second program. Thank you.